حي على الفلاح.
The king of Egypt had a dream. He sees himself on the banks of the Nile River. The water is receding before him, becoming mere mud. The fish begin to skip and jump in the mud. Indeed, I have seen in a dream 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 that were lean, and 7 green spikes of grain, and others that were dry. O eminent ones, explain to me my vision, if you should interpret visions. From the springs of wisdom and knowledge that Allah had granted Yusuf, he disclosed the meaning of the dream. You will plant for 7 years consecutively, and what you harvest leave in its spikes, except a little from which you will eat. Then will come after that 7 difficult years, which will consume what you saved for them, except a little from which you will store. Then will come after that a year in which the people will be given rain, and in which they will press olives and grapes. The king was greatly astonished. Who could this person be? He commanded that Yusuf be set free from prison and presented to him at once. Yusuf advised the king to start planning for years of famine ahead. He informed him that the famine would affect not only Egypt, but the neighboring countries as well. The king offered him a high position. Once the innocence of Yusuf AS was established, he was made the chief minister of Egypt, bearing the title of Al-Aziz, the highest official in the land after the king. Yusuf AS proclaimed his Lord's message and established a just law based on Allah's commands. In addition to this, he stored up the country's grain during the first 7 years of plenty, except that portion that the people ate. Yusuf ruled the people of Egypt with justice, and the people, men and women, loved him. The people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, say that the king admired Yusuf and thus put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. He also gave him his ring, made him wear silk, put a gold chain around his neck, and took him around in his other means of transport. His people yelled out in front of him, "You are our master, king." The king said to Yusuf, "I am not greater than you, except in terms of the throne." Allah said, "And thus we firmly established Yusuf in the land, with authority to do therein as he pleased." Prophet Yusuf thus became the Al-Aziz of Egypt, and became his new duties without delay. He was determined that when the famine arrived, nobody should starve. The river Nile flooded its banks regularly to provide fertile soil for the growth of food grain, and Prophet Yusuf AS was aware that the famine would be caused by the decrease of the water in this river. He decided to make a brief tour of Egypt to assess the best locations where intensive cultivation could be carried out. He allocated extra money to the farmers in the most fertile areas of the Nile, so that they would be able to grow the maximum amount of grain. He also ordered the construction of huge storehouses capable of storing several hundred tons of the surplus grain. During the first 7 years, he supplied grain to the people according to their minimum needs and stored the rest in the newly built granaries. By the time the 7 years were over, the granaries were full. The water level of the Nile fell tremendously, and the country was hit by a severe drought. However, due to his foresight and planning, the country did not face a shortage of food. The famine affected neighboring lands as well. The nearby land of Canaan, Palestine, the homeland of Yusuf, was also affected greatly. Yusuf advised the king that as his kingdom was blessed with reserved grain, he should sell his grain to the needy nations at a fair price. The king agreed, and the good news spread all over the region. Prophet Yaqub AS lived with his sons. One day, he called them and said, "O my sons, we are in great distress due to the famine. You may go to the Al-Aziz of Egypt, whose reputation as a kind and just person has spread everywhere in the country. Leave Benjamin with me for company, so that I may not be lonely." As commanded by their father, the brothers of Prophet Yusuf AS set off for Egypt to purchase grain and bring it back to Canaan. When the brothers arrived in Egypt and were ushered in to see Yusuf AS, he recognized them immediately, but as they had not seen him since their separation at the well, they did not know him. How would they have known that the little brother that they had sold to the Egyptian caravan, who had then been sold into slavery, had now become the chief minister of Egypt? Yusuf a.s. was eager for news of his beloved father, mother, and younger brother. He spoke to his brothers in a way that they could not recognize him. Inquiring the purpose of their visit, they replied, "We are 11 brothers, the children of a noble prophet. The youngest is at home tending to the needs of our aging father." On hearing this, Yusuf's eyes filled with tears. His longing for home swelled up in his heart, as well as his longing for his beloved parents and his loving brother Binyamin. "Are you truthful people?" Yusuf asked them. Perturbed, they replied, "What reason should we have to state an untruth?" Yusuf a.s. inquired about other siblings. They said, "We were originally 12 brothers." They replied, never suspecting to whom they were speaking. "But the younger, who was most loved by our father, was slain. He had another brother, but our father did not send him with us, keeping him at home because he loves him so much." Concealing his concern about the welfare of his father and the household, Yusuf a.s. acted suspicious as to the truth of their story. He ordered for his brothers to be treated as official guests and for them to be given as much grain as they could carry. Before they left on the return trip home, Yusuf a.s. made clear to them his terms for dealing with them in the future. "If what you say is true, then bring your brother as proof and I will reward you with double rations. But if you do not bring him to me, it would be better if you do not return," Yusuf warned them. They then said, "We will try to get permission from our father, and surely we will do it." Yusuf then ordered his servants to return their money and merchandise, which they had brought to buy their food, and to put them secretly back in their luggage, so that they may know it when they go back to their family, in order that they come back. There are numerous explanations for his action of putting the money back secretly. It is said that he did this in case if they did not want to come back, then they might at least come back to return the money. A second opinion says that he feared they may not have enough money to come back next year. In a third opinion, it says that he felt ashamed to take money from his brothers for their food. The brothers returned to their father. Before they could unload the camels, they greeted their father Yaqub, then criticized him. "We were denied some supplies because you, O father, did not let your son Binyamin go with us. They would not give us food for absentees. Why would you not entrust him with us?" Yaqub a.s. became sad and told them, "I will not permit Binyamin to travel with you. I will not part with him, for I entrusted Yusuf to you, and you failed me." Binyamin had become very close to his father, especially after Yusuf a.s.'s disappearance. Remembering his previous loss, Yaqub a.s. did not want to part with his young son. Once again, the brothers promised to safeguard their youngest brother, and once again, Yaqub a.s. felt his heart constrict with fear. Yaqub a.s. was greatly troubled by their demand, for in truth, he had never recovered from the pain of his son's earlier betrayal of his trust. Indeed, for all he knew, this might be merely another plot of theirs for getting rid of their half-brother. Later, when the 10 brothers opened their grain sacks, they were surprised to find the money purse returned intact. They rushed to their father. "Look, father, the noble official has returned our money. This is surely proof that we would not harm our brother, and it can only benefit us." But Yaqub refused to send Binyamin with them. After some time, when they had no more grain, Yaqub asked them to travel to Egypt for more. They reminded him of the warning the Egyptian official had given them. They could not return without Binyamin. Yaqub a.s. agreed. Reading the signs, he readily understood that the matter had been decreed by Allah, and that his responsibility was to accept the destiny ordained for himself and his sons. However, for his own peace of mind, he bound them by solemn pledge. He said, "I will not send him with you unless you give me a pledge in Allah's name that you shall bring him back to me as safely as you take him." They gave their solemn pledge. When they gave their word, Yaqub a.s. said, "Allah, over what they say, is witness." Although Yaqub a.s. was particularly close to his youngest 2 sons, he loved all his sons dearly. They were strong, handsome, capable men, and Yaqub alayhi salam was afraid that some harm might befall them on yet another trip to Egypt. To minimize the risks, he made his sons promise to enter the city by different gates. Yaqub blessed them on their departure and prayed to Allah for their protection. The brothers undertook the long journey to Egypt, taking good care of Binyamin. It is mentioned in the books of the Jews and the Christians that Yaqub sent with his sons some gifts for the king in the form of pistachio nuts, almonds, spices, honey, and balm. They also took with them the money that was returned the first time, as well as other things. As their father had advised, the brothers entered the city through different gates, and soon again they were in the presence of the Al-Aziz. He prepared a feast for them and seated them in pairs. Yusuf arranged to sit next to his beloved brother Binyamin, who began to weep. Yusuf asked him why he was crying. He replied, "If my brother Yusuf had been here, I would have sat next to him." Later, he gave them all accommodation at his own house and asked Binyamin to sleep in his room. During the night, when Yusuf and Binyamin were alone in the room, Yusuf asked whether he would have him for a brother. Binyamin respectfully answered that he regarded his host as a wonderful person, but he could never take the place of his brother. Yusuf broke down and amidst flowing tears said, "My loving brother, I am the brother who was lost, and those name you are constantly repeating. Fate has brought us together after many years of separation. This is Allah's favor, but let it be a secret between us for the time being." Binyamin flung his arms around Yusuf, and both brothers shed tears of joy. Then, in keeping with his custom, Yusuf alayhi salam ordered that 1 load of grain be given to each of the 11 men. Afterwards, he put a golden cup of the king into his beloved brother's Binyamin's bag. The 11 brothers set out for home with their load. Along the way, they were summoned back by officials of the minister, saying that the king's golden cup was missing. The brothers were astonished and defended themselves, asserting that they were not thieves and had no knowledge of the missing cup. The officials asked, "What is your punishment for one who steals?" The brothers replied that in the religion of their great-grandfather Ibrahim alayhi salam, the one who steals is taken as a servant. Yusuf alayhi salam did not want his brother punished under the laws of Egypt, but wanted the opportunity to keep his brother with him, while the others returned to their father Yaqub alayhi salam. The official ordered his soldiers to start searching the caravan. Yusuf was watching the incident from high upon his throne. He had given instructions for Binyamin's bag to be the last to be searched. When they did not find the cup in the bags of the 10 older brothers, their brothers sighed in relief. There remained only the bag of their youngest brother, Binyamin. Yusuf said, intervening for the first time, that there was no need to search his saddle, as he did not look like a thief. His brothers affirmed, "We will not move an inch unless his saddle is searched as well. We are the sons of a noble man, not thieves." The soldiers reached in their hands and pulled out the king's cup. The brothers exclaimed, "If he steals now, a brother of his has stolen before." They were talking about Yusuf because it is said that he stole the idols of his maternal grandfather and broke it. To some others, it is suggested that he used to take food from his house and feed the poor. They strayed from the present issue in order to blame a particular group of the children of Yaqub. Yet although they did not have the means to disprove it, neither did they make the slightest attempt to defend Binyamin's honor or deny the accusations, which they certainly knew to be false. They joined forces in the accusations against him. Thus, they failed both Binyamin and their father, with them whom they had taken a solemn oath by Allah to do all in their power to protect their youngest brother and bring him safely home. As they had told Yusuf in the past for a paltry price, they now sold Binyamin for a load of grain. Yusuf alayhi salam heard the resentment with his own ears and was filled with regret. Yet he swallowed his own resentment, keeping it within. He said to himself, "You went further and fared worse. It shall go bad with you and worse hereafter, and Allah knows your intention." They began to beg Yusuf for mercy. "Yusuf, O minister, take one of us in his stead. He is the son of a good man, and we can see you are a good man." Yusuf answered calmly, "How can you want to set free the man who has stolen the king's cup. It would be sinful. The brothers went on pleading for mercy. However, the guards said that the king had spoken and his word was law. Now recalling their solemn promise to their father, the brothers began to reflect on the difficulty of their situation. They were deeply troubled about how they would face him with such news, which would add so greatly to his grief over the loss of Yusuf AS, whom he had never ceased to mourn, that it might destroy him. They pleaded to the Al-Aziz and spoke about his old age and weakness and his great love for Binyamin. They also repeated that Binyamin's brother had been lost in the past, and since their father was already broken-hearted on that account, they would probably die when he heard this news. They begged him to take one of them in Binyamin's place. Yusuf AS remained adamant. The brothers realized that they had reached a dead end. There was nothing further to be hoped for from the Al-Aziz unless they complied with his demand. Yusuf AS' scheme and actions were carried out under a divine plan for his brothers and father. Yusuf AS' primary objective was their repentance and reform. If he had revealed himself to them at once, there might have been no repentance, but merely more envy and resentment. The desired lesson and effect were therefore to be produced through suspense, drama, and mystery, letting the brothers feel the threat of being denied grain to feed their families and of encountering unknown troubles in Egypt. The eldest brother, Judah, took charge and said, "Don't you know that our father did take an oath from you in Allah's name? So now you are unable to fulfill this oath. You have been negligent with this brother as you were with Yusuf. Thus, I cannot face my father. Therefore, I will not leave this land until my father permits me, or Allah decides my case, and he is the best of the judges." So Yehuda stayed at a tavern awaiting the fate of Binyamin. In the meantime, Yusuf kept Binyamin in his house as his personal guest and told him how he had devised the plot to put the king's cup in his bag in order to keep him behind, so as to protect him. He was also glad that Yehuda had stayed behind, as he was a good-hearted brother. Yusuf secretly arranged to watch over Yehuda's well-being. 9 brothers now home with their loads of grain, and with heavy troubled hearts, go to their father in great distress.